Hello, welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So a bit of an unusual screen here. We'll get on to the actual Set Musings episode, but very occasionally I like to do what I would think of as an orientation episode, just to work out like where we are in Set Musings, where we're going to end up. So in today's episode we'll be looking at Eldritch Moon. If we move forward through all the, for want of a better word, standard sets, so that's a combination of the regular expansions and any core sets, because at the moment core sets stopped for a while and then they were reintroduced, and that's going to take us up to Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And that's because in parallel with the Set Musings, I had been doing new sets as they came out in the same style as the Set Musings series. Prior to that, I had done the odd set review, but it wasn't really in the Set Musings template that I now use, and I've used since Mirage. So we started off with Mirage. I did, I think, 1 week do a little bit of a sidetrack into Ice Age, although I don't think it was a full-blown Set Musings. I just had I think I did a deck durdle episode about the block. So we started off with Mirage Block as our first episode of Set Musings. We're now on Eldritch Moon. We're going to end up at Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms because, as I said, in parallel with the Set Musings for old stuff, for nostalgic stuff, I was also releasing videos as newer sets came out. Once I'd sort of started the episode and it was underway, the episodes in the series, and it was underway. So when we get to Innistrad Midnight Hunt, there's already a Set Musings for that set. So that's all I'm saying. So if you count through from here and include today's episode, here to here, I think that's 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, 21, including today's. So just interesting to know where we are. Once we get to this point, obviously any new sets that come out, so from here, all of the new stuff I did has so far taken us up to the most recently released set, which was the Brothers War. So anything new coming out, well, before if it comes out before we get to here, then obviously I'll do a special episode. But then going forward, I'll just obviously be doing new sets as they come out, and that will be what the Set Musings ultimately becomes. Now, of course, to fill in the gaps, I need something else, and at this point, I'm still deciding in my mind, but it will be something nostalgic. And the way I'm going with this, the only thing that I'm going to be doing that features new product will be the Set Musings episodes. Like I said, once I get up to this point here, and I'll just pick up at whatever point I need to after the Brothers War, depending on what sets come out in the 21 weeks between now and when I get up to Strixhaven set. Oh, sorry. So I keep saying that. I meant the Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Okay. So let's just move that off screen because you don't normally see that screen. That's my sort of show notes. So Eldritch Moon, 205 cards. So we're still in that 2 set paradigm. So core sets have gone away, and so we have 2 sets followed by 2 sets, and it's generally a large set and then a slightly smaller set. It's not a small set, but it is slightly smaller. This is 205 cards, or anyway it seems that way to my eyes, because back in the day small sets were a lot smaller, I believe, than 205 cards. "74 commons, 70 uncommons, 47 rares, 14 mythic rares, but no basic lands. Any basic lands that might feature in the basic lands slot would be from Shadows over Innistrad. We have double face cards, a graveyard, matters themes. We've also got, in terms of keywords, ability words, Delirium, Emerge, Escalate, Madness, Meld, Protection, Transform. I'm also going to be looking at the tribal themes, both as they are represented in individual colours and within a 2-colour framework as well, and any other interesting colour situations we have. And you'll see exactly why I mention that in a moment. They're doing interesting things with Transform here. And also, there are very few full cycles in the set. So yeah, most of this is slicing and dicing through other things apart from cycles. I always forget to do this, don't I? As I'm chatting then, I should really scroll down at the same time so we can just get a feel for the artwork. And here you'll notice we have Transform with the double face cards. And it's interesting to note, and I may need to scroll up to the top again, whether or not we have the sort of overspill that we've come to know with certain Eldrazi cards. And this is something, that goes back to previous sets and implies that the Eldrazi are bigger than the card frame, the standard art area, and they are big. So we got some 2-coloured stuff, and then a few non-basic lands. Now if we shoot back up to the top, you can see here we again have the artwork spilling over into both the adjacent space between the frame of the artwork and the border frame down here, but also you can sort of see that slightly watermark effect underneath the area where we have the rules text and any other reminder text that might be in here. And you'll notice something else here as well, which we'll come on to in a moment with a few of the cards in here, which we've seen before. But can you see that's what I wanted to show you? So one side, Human Knight, regular artwork, or in terms of the relationship to the frame, flip over, transforms to an Eldrazi horror, and there's the overspill. So 9 reprints in the set. And you can see in some instances there is new artwork, in other instances there isn't. I mean, what you tend to notice is generally the ones where there isn't new artwork is because thematically the artwork does fit in with the set. But I'm never sure how consistent that rule is. And then we have 199 cards that at this point in Magic's history were not reprints. So again, I'm fiddling around a little bit here. We've got slightly more colour related slicing going on because I'm comparing and contrasting some cards, their colour identity versus their casting colour, just to really highlight some of the new unique features in the set more than anything. So we have 15 cards which have a colour ID of 0. So colourless in the casting cost, and if there is any activation cost on any of these, that is also colourless. You can see a mixed bag here. Obviously the lands register, and additionally we have some Eldrazi creatures which are not Eldrazi's as a result of a transformation. And we have 42 cards which are classed as colourless, even though you can see here, or sorry, as classed as colourless in the casting cost. And I believe it's doing this because we have, I don't know if the search is getting confused, exactly what's going on, but it's because of this here. So they have a flip side, which is colourless. Something's not quite right here. Let me just check this. Yeah, interesting. We'll come back to emerge later. So definitely some colour shenanigans going on here in the set. And then we've got 168 cards here where they're one colour in the casting cost, but as you've seen, now that's going to include some of these here. I wonder if there's something wrong with the tags in Scryfall. And you can see we've got some transform stuff here. Sorry, we've got some meld as well. This is why, there's appears to be a reference here to another card. But it's a meld card. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a colour flip into a colourless theme here. So some 2-colour stuff in the colours. There's 10 of those. No doubt we'll revisit those. I've probably guessed that there may well be some 2-colour cycles in the set. And then we've got a 3-colour card as well here. 3 colours in the casting cost. And I also just wanted to look at some creatures which their colour identity was 0, seeing as we were in a block where, again, playing around with the colour of cards and whether or not they're colourless, and things we've seen previously in previous sets with devoid, that sort of thing. Clearly that's a thing. And I was curious for the type of creature, how many creature cards fall into that category. And you can see actually so we've got Eldrazi here, a scarecrow, well, the artifact creatures and the Eldrazi, and this is here because it flips into a Eldrazi reflection. So what sort of creature types are we seeing in white? Humans. There's an angel horror there, and no doubt we'll be revisiting that. So human spirits and angels, I would say, in white. And in blue, humans, there's a zombie there. Spirits again, shapeshifter, more spirits. Humans, using the 2-colour cards, same sort of thing. In black, zombies, vampires, rats. It's Vampire Knight, human rogue. There's Tree of Perdition as a plant. And then in the 2 colours we've got human wizard, vampire cleric, human warrior and plant skeleton. In red, wolves, vampires, there's a devil horror there. Werewolves, vampires, another devil, more vampires. I think we've got at least 1 dragon in red. Yep. And then in terms of the 2-colour stuff, vampire cleric, human werewolf, and a spirit in blue-red. Okay. And in green, human warrior, plant elemental, human cleric, human horror. So lots of sort of 2 creature type things in the set. Got a spider. Snake, werewolf, more humans. There's an elk there, and a tree folk, and 3 out of 4 of the 2-colour cards are humans, and you can see one of them flips from a human werewolf into a werewolf. So big stuff. Spells larger than 6 mana, and there's 19 of those in the set. You can see several here are colourless in the casting cost. Double face stuff. So 15 double face cards. So let's have a proper look at these. You can see again, here's the day symbol, and it flips over to the night symbol. and they all have a various thing that will transform them, and we'll revisit transform in a moment, but I just wanted to show you what they transform into first. So extricator of sin goes into extricator of flesh, lone rider goes in it that rides as one, curious homunculus, voracious reader, docent of perfection, final iteration, grizzled angler, grisly anglerfish, Oldara and pariah, abolisher of bloodlines, conduit storms, conduit of emrakul, smouldering werewolf into erupting dreadwolf, Vildin pack outcast into drone pack kindred, what's that? Kessig prowler goes into sinuous predator, shrill howler to howling chorus, tangle claw werewolf into fibrous entangler, elven walled captive into elven walled abomination, Auric of the Krallen horde into Auric uncontested alpha, and Cryptolith fragment into Aura of Emrakul. And of course the thing that you notice here, apart from Auric, these all appear to be colourless on the flip side, and well, all Eldrazi actually of some description, except Ulrich, which just transforms from a human werewolf into a regular werewolf. So 40 cards that reference in some way the graveyard, and that, as you can see, may well be through another ability which is dependent in some way by the state of the graveyard. But yeah, still quite a big graveyard theme in the set. So now just looking at, comparing it to the previous set, and we had the various specific tribes, how are they represented? So if you remember, spirits were in white and blue, and we have white, blue, green, and then both white, blue and blue, red, 2 colour cards, and there's 14 of those. For zombies, which are in blue and black, we've got still blue and black. For vampires, which were in black and red, still in black and red. For wolves or werewolves, which were predominantly in red and green, that is still the case, except for one here. We have a wolf construct, which is colourless. And then humans, there's 33 of those, so a big difference if you look at the amounts of cards with the other ones. Look at the sort of numbers. There's 33 humans, and they're in white, by the looks of things, quite a number. 4 in blue, 2 in black, 3 in red, and 7 in green. So predominantly in white. And then also in 4-on-4 2 colour cards. And you may notice, you can see which one of these are actually, if any, transforming. I think there was just a couple here. And then we have Eldrazi. Now when we look at it, we've got 29 Eldrazi cards, but as we scroll down, it's not till we get down to here that we actually see Eldrazi mentioned, but you can see there's quite a number of colourless Eldrazi, and the reason why these have been captured is because, as you saw earlier, on the flip side, the ones that aren't Eldrazi on the day side are Eldrazi's on the night side. We get down to here, you can see all of these Eldrazi are not hidden. And there's one there, because as it's day side it's a regular artifact. So yeah, Eldrazi one way or another are pretty predominant in the set, but again you have this theme of the Eldrazi being hidden in some ways. So moving on to individual keywords and abilities. We've got Delirium in the set, and this is the one I was mentioning earlier about the link with the graveyard. So you can see here we've got this condition. So Delirium, at the beginning of upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards among cards in your graveyard, and you can see somewhere in this Delirium rules text, that's the consistent part, that 4 or more types of cards in your graveyard. And then on different cards you get a different benefit if you manage to fulfill that criteria. And there are 14 of those: white, blue, black, green, and 2-colour black, green. Notice nothing in red, it would appear. 11 cards have Emerge. So with Emerge, 7 and a blue, you may cast this spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the Emerge cost reduced by the creature's converted mana cost. So interesting way of playing with alternate casting costs. And you can see that basic Emerge rules reminder is the same, where it's all, you must cast this spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the Emerge cost reduced by that creature's converted mana cost. So for this one, instead of paying 8 to cast it, you have this Emerge. So for 6 and a black, you can cast it for its Emerge cost, and then you reduce that amount by the creature's converted mana cost. Escalate. So this is interesting. So with Escalate, you pay this cost for each mode chosen beyond the first. So the regular casting cost gets you one mode, and then you can choose to have additional effects by escalating it. And you can see here there may be something apart from just paying mana, but it looks like the vast majority of them you pay some sort of mana of any colour. There's just 2 here where it's like a non-mana escalate cost. Madness. So Madness and then a certain cost. So if you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its Madness cost or put it into your graveyard. So the only difference between all of these cards is the amount you pay to partake of Madness. So there doesn't appear to be any Madness in white. And then we got Meld. So let's see if I can show you here what's exactly going on. You can see when you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel or human card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And this melds with Gisela the Broken Blade. Graph Rats melds with Midnight Scavengers. And you can see here it's referencing the creature that the meld's going to become, which is on the flip side of the card. Hanwur Garrison and Hanwur Battlements. And then this is what they meld into. So, Bruna Gisela, they meld into Brisella. Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers, they meld into Chittering Host. And you can see here's the line. So you make this huge card out of the two. And then that final pair, the Hanwir pair, meld into Hanwir the Writhing Township. So that's why when you're looking through this without realising these are melded cards, it looks so odd in the artwork, because you can see this is actually two cards stacked one on top of each other. And if you were to flip these over, then obviously on the other side is the original card. And then there is sort of some protection from that's referenced in the set, which is Emrakul, and it has protection from instants. And I'm not sure off the top of my head how much we've seen this before in Magic, actually. So that's specifically protection from instants. You know, we see hexproof, we see shroud, and then we see protection from specific colours or protection from artifacts. But interesting here, we've got protection from instants. And I'd already mentioned transform. You've seen the cards, but let's just look at actually where the transform is mentioned. And it can be in a number of different places. You can see there's some delirium cards here, which the delirium actually triggers. If it triggers, then it triggers a transform. Then there's other ones which are based on other conditions. So here one to do with gaining life. And so all of these have something that triggers the transform. So the two cycles, or the two full cycles in the set, because there's a load of little different other mini and mega cycles. So we have this cycle of allied coloured rares and mythics. So 5 creatures with casting cost including an allied colour pair. So white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, white. Some are rare, some are at mythic rare. One is double-faced. Then we have this enemy coloured uncommons, 5 uncommon cards that can be cast using mana of an enemy colour. And Lashweed Lurkers here because the enemy colours are in the emerge cost. So the mega cycles, So Oath of Liliana was part of that mega cycle. So Gatewatch had the other four. There was the Gideon, the Jace, the Chandra, and the Nissa Oath, and this is the fifth one that makes up the complete mega cycle. And a mega cycle is where the cycle occurs not just in the block, but just, well, outside of the block, basically. Because they started way back in Oath of the Gatewatch, which was a different block. There was also a 3-card cycle of Eldrazi Titans, and this forms part of that cycle. So Emrakul in here, we had Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, which is in battle for Zendikar, and Kozilek, the Great Distortion, which was in Oath of the Gatewatch. And then Docent of Perfection. So with Docent of Perfection, it transforms into Final Iteration. And this is a 3-card cycle, again spread out. So Delver of Secrets into Insectile Aberration was in Innistrad. Then Aberrant Researcher Perfected Form was Shadows over Innistrad. So this completes it. Rare double face cards. So some escalation cards. The escalate keywords exist on Mardu coloured modal spells, resulting in 3 partial cycles, 2 triplets and a pair. So we have the Allegiance little mini cycle. We have the Borrowed, and again look, they've all got escalate on them. 3 of those. And then the Collective, 3 of those. Red, white and black. Although for this one it's just the red and the white. Some pairs. Mirrored pairs. Faithbearer Paladin and Markov Crusader. And then some, obviously these are meld pairs. So we've looked at these already, but they're classed as pairs. So these pair together to produce, as we saw earlier, the final melded card. 15 mythics in the set. So quite a mixed bag here. Sorcery, legendary creature, enchantment, planeswalker, creature again, another creature, sorcery, another legendary creature, and then we have 2 2-colour legendary creatures, a 2-colour regular creature, a planeswalker in 3 colours, and then these 3 cards. Now, of course, this one here is actually the melded card. One part being Gisela. No basic lands. 3 non-basics, one of which is part of a meld, and one of which is a legendary land. Two planeswalkers, Liliana and Tamio. Mono black, green, white, blue. 11 legendaries that aren't planeswalker. So you can see here that out of the 11, 1 is a legendary enchantment and 1 is a legendary land. All the rest are creatures. I've got an Angel Horror, 2 of those. And these meld together, as we've seen. We've got Thalia, we've got Ishkana, Graph Widow, couple more 2 colours. Gisser and Gerald. Ulrich of the Krallen Horde. There's the melded card. Another melded card there. So, yeah, 2 of the... Is it the case that 2 of the melded cards produce a legend, but 1 doesn't? Have I got that right? Yeah. $120 creatures in the set of various types, as we've seen. 10 enchantments. And 9 auras. Now, we have here, it looks a bit odd, it looks like this is a regular artifact. We've got 4 creature artifacts because this, when it transforms, becomes a creature and it's an artifact on the other side. So that's why it turns up like that in this search. Artifact on one side, creature on the other. Then we've got 5 pieces of equipment. Two of these, which are, and I took out the other one, screened it out here, that are regular artifacts, because you can see things can get a little bit messy. So there was a cryptolith fragment, which is an artifact on one side. So just 2 artifacts there that aren't anything else. 28 instants in the set. And you can see some of these are escalate, so they're modal. So we get a number of different things. So pretty flexible set utility wise. So we've got life gain and a number of other things. Pump, asymmetric pump that's conditional, exile. So a lot of these are wrapped up in other conditions, either through explicit keywords or ability words, or just with additional rules text. Damage prevention with a condition on it, tap down, conditional counter spell, that interesting like bounce in and out that we've been seeing. Top of the library, manipulation. Card draw with delirium. Exile of spells and abilities. Counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. Return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. Another modal spell. There's murder was in the set, so there's our instant speed black destruction spell. Here's our black card draw with an additional condition. Asymmetric pump with a conditioner and also first strike and madness. Another modal spell in red. There's our conditional X damage spell, which is the X is conditioned on something else outside of the casting cost. Interesting pump spell, pump on the power with this other condition sort of strapped to it, or other consequence strapped to it. More escalate. There's a 6 damage spell. Green pump. A green top of the library manipulation. Well, it's that thing that green sometimes does where it looks at the top of your library and then... sorry, I'll start again. I'm misreading this. So it puts the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you can return a creature or land card from your graveyard. So it's putting the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. So it's a weird form of library manipulation where they get dumped into the graveyard and then you choose from the graveyard as a whole. Interesting twist. Artifact or enchantment destruction, transform, pump and hexproof, and ride down, which is his interesting destruction of target blocking creatures, and also trample or conditional trample. How many sorceries have we got? 29 sorceries. Okay. Another modal escalate. It's an interesting way they're doing top of the library manipulation in different colours here, actually. It's a way of dealing with artifacts or enchantment by exiling them. We've seen this reveal your card from your opening hand in other sets before, but just done different ways. Two 1/1 white spirits, so spirit creature tokens and life gain. Oh, this outside the game thing you occasionally see. Library manipulation, and again into using this interesting thing between the library and the graveyard. So like a interesting conditional mill. There's mill with library manipulation. Curious. Bounce. Draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of cards. Yep. Bounce back from the graveyard to your hand. Sorcery speed. Destruction in black with additional conditions. There's more modal stuff. Oh, I always like these sort of things. With the black does always interesting things with tokens. Life depletion. Target opponent loses 3 life and puts a card from his or her hand on top of his or her library. Okay. It's interesting how they've combined life loss with like hand manipulation, but then it's not into the graveyard. It's back into the library. Yeah, like tons of, well, as we've seen, tons of like graveyard manipulation here. There's a -13 spell there. Discard. What have we got in red for sorcery speed? Destruction, so 4 damage, modal spell, pump spell. Oh, this one. Target opponent gains control of target permanent you control. I'm sure I pulled one of those in a dollar armor booster. 3 damage, 1 damage with tokens, conditional spell there. Again, combining up this sort of scalable condition with the damage. Oh, more graveyard recursion. So we're seeing sort of graveyard stuff across lots of different colours here. boss fight there. Conditional damage. Oh, returning all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And a bit of green tutoring. Okay, so back to the full lot of cards. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing with all the different aspects. It was very difficult when I was putting this episode together how to exactly slice this because of all the transform and the colourless and the drastic changes on some of the cards in the types, but hopefully that was a fairly good way of musing over the set. Oops. So, most expensive card in the set, Eldritch Emrakul. There's also, again, these, we saw this in the other set, didn't we? What appears to be, these appear to be pre-release promos. And yeah, quite pricey. So I'm assuming, were they doing, yeah, it looks like they did that thing again with making different promos available on at the pre-release. So we've got Emrakul, we've got Gisela, we've got Tree of Perdition, interesting card. Mind's Dilation. Yeah, you can see all of these have a equivalent promo. Eldritch Evolution, Thalia, Sigarda's Aid, Crypt Breaker. Oh, so we're now well below. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. So really, yeah, looking at this, it was only the Tree of Perdition, the Gisela and Emrakul that are still above $10 in their regular format if you ignore the promos. I think we saw that in the other set, didn't we? Same sort of thing where there was quite a dramatic fall off in the price of the regular cards, but the promos were pretty pricey. So yeah, if you went to pre-release and held on to your cards, or held on to your promos. So the EDH bit. So again, if you've not seen one of my episodes before, this is where I go through, look at the EDH ranking versus the set, and I sort of slice this as per a regular viewer's request. So what we do first of all is look at the reprint. Look at the cards that aren't reprints and just commit these to memory. So these are all the, at that point, cards that were new in the set and how they rank on EDH Rec in terms of popularity in EDH based on what sort of decks are on EDH Rec. So Geiger Reach Sanitarium, Eldritch Evolution, Imprisoned in the Moon. This is an interesting card. So it's converting a creature, a land or a planeswalker into this colourless land which only generates colourless mana, and it loses all other card types and abilities. I don't know if I've ever seen that happen on a card across multiple permanents. You see it for specific permanents being nerfed in some way, and you see instances where certain cards will nerf the colour identity of a land or the mana it produces more correctly. But this was an interesting thing to do, I think anyway. Splendid Reclamation, Sigarda's Aid, Selflit Spirit. So the first legendary creature we hit is Thalia. And then you can see here we've got the meld cards as well. So let's just try and do what we normally do, is commit the top 4 to memory, which I always have fun doing and probably end up flipping back. Geiger Reach Sanitarium, Eldritch Evolution, Imprisoning the Moon, Splendid Reclamation. So in terms of the reprints, and there were only 9, there weren't many reprints in the set. We've got Murder, Prey Upon, Turn Aside, Rise from the Grave, Terrarian, Convolute, Ride Down, Hamlet Captain, Peace of Mind. So let's see when we mesh the two together, what rises above the others. So interestingly, these 5 have bubbled above Murder. So based on the EDH rec ranking, these are more popular in decks on there than Murder. And then we've got some more from the set. Of course, I've forgotten what. So Prey Upon was the next one down. Oh, is this way down the list? Now, the only other slight issue with this is obviously these cards may have been, although they were not reprints, so cards like these weren't reprints of previous cards, they may well have been reprinted themselves, which means that might pump them up the ranking as well. So that's another possible reason. You can see, for instance, Eldritch Moon, Sigarda's Aid wasn't a reprint at the time Eldritch Moon was released, but subsequently it's been reprinted in Commander Legends, which is probably why it's been raised up above, say, Murder. And yeah, you can see as well Splendid Reclamation. So while these weren't reprints at that point, subsequently they have been reprinted in various Commander product and or sets as well. So yeah, that probably explains it. Because particularly this, if you think about it, there might be quite, and I'm just speculating here, there might be quite a few decks in EDH Rec which have taken, the shell of a Commander deck that was released and pulled out certain cards and replaced them with others. And of course the land, this sort of utility land, which is useful in a multitude of decks, is gonna stay in. Among, in addition to the card just being selected as a, what do you call it, like a, can't think of the term now. Anyway, one that just people always put in their decks. Or favourite things like, not quite like Soul Rings, but you know what I mean. Like auto include. Okay, so not really much to talk about supplemental product wise, because as you can see at the top, and you can normally see, that's why I always start off at the top, just an set of intro packs, no battle packs, no event decks or whatever replace those. They're all gone. And in terms of the intro decks, we have 2 which are enemy coloured and 3 that are allied. I suspect the article here isn't going to give me much information about the strategy. So this one here, the Unlikely Alliance one, is a plains and a swamp. I think at this point as well, I don't think I'd opened intro decks for a long while, so I wouldn't even be able to, I wouldn't know much about these decks themselves. So this one, which is a Dangerous Knowledge, was Islands and Mountains, Shallow Graves, Swamp and an Island, Untamed Wild, a Mountain and a Forest. I'm assuming they still contain one each of the... Oh, there's a foil rare. So are they implying that there's only one foil? Oh yeah, so there's only one foil rare, and then there's probably an additional rare. There always used to be two, pretty sure. Well, yeah, there was always two, but these, and one of which was a foil. So Sanctify of the Souls in the Unlikely Alliances, Niblis of the Frost in Dangerous Knowledge, Newscraft Mob in Shallow Graves, Assembled Alphas in Untamed Wild, an Ovenwald Observer in Weapons and Wards. And I think if I go here as well, yeah, this is a problem. You either get page not found now, or just basically a real stripped down list of the decks. I'm just looking to see if there is anything moderately interesting in here in terms of the construction of the deck. Yeah, no real attempt to add other possible. I mean, I'm trying to think whether they would even be able to consider putting in dual lands from the previous set, because if you remember historically, intro packs always contained either, well, the second one's always contained cards from the set and cards from the previous set. And I'm trying to remember whether we reached a point where intro decks also included core set cards or not, but we don't have a core set at this point, so it's a moot point. Yeah. So it's interesting. This is an interesting period in Magic's history because they really dialed back on the like the supplemental deck side of things in this set. Now, of course, that's not to say they didn't pump up other supplemental products, but yeah, that's interesting development. So when we come to do next week's video, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. And that was me just checking some things. I wanted to see what that was there. Okay, so what have we got planned for Commander Durdle? Well, it wasn't the most popular legendary creature on EDH Rec, but I did really want to build a spider tribal deck. So here we have Ishkanar. So obviously I've kept the other number of, there's not many spiders in the set, there's just Swift Spinner, and it's just a 3 and a green 2/3 with flash and reach, so we can flash it in. So I'm going to leave that in, or put it in, and unless something else bounces it out. I thought Tree of Perdition would be interesting in here. As you've seen, it looks pretty popular when we looked at the EDH Rec ranking. And then I just went through, and for each of the types of cards, I included a number of cards from the set that have some sort of utility value. Now, obviously, I accept there are probably more powerful cards that do some of the things here, but I always like to start off with utility from the set. So, for instance, here's the set's way of destroying target artifacts or enchantments. In this case, you actually gain 4 life as well, stapled to it. But as I've said, we could probably find another way of doing that in green, which would be cheaper, but wouldn't have the gain 4 life on it. Whether or not we need that or it's useful to us is another matter, but I'm going to leave it in there. I'll go through these individually, but that's again, if you're not familiar with this series, you're not familiar with the follow-on from this, which is the Commander Durdle episode, that's basically how I tend to roll with this. Is I put in creatures that are thematically connected to the commander, if there are indeed any, and then other cards which have utility on them, but could well be improved, and we could find cards that are strictly better. And so, yeah, we've got a few things here like Cryptolith Fragment, which is a mana rock, but does an interesting transformation. Terrarion and so on. But I'll revisit these when I do the episode. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now. And hopefully I will catch you in the Commander Turtle episode that goes with this.